This is Dr. J. Kent Gregory, and welcome to part three of chapter five, selection. This is the final part to our discussion of selection. So let's start off with testing and selecting. So there are different types of tests that can be used during the selection process. Uh, these include cognitive ability tests, personality tests, physical ability tests, of course, for those jobs that would require it, job knowledge tests, and then work samples. Selection methods include the clinical selection approach and then statistical method approaches. So among the statistical methods are the multiple cutoff model and the multiple hurdle model. So with the multiple cutoff model, this is where the scoring of different aspects of the criteria require a minimum score. So you require a minimum scoring of 4 out of 5 on the different criteria. Multiple hurdle model this sets up almost it's related to the multiple cutoff, but it sets the maximum where you are only going to consider potential employees who have scored above a certain level. So rather than setting a minimum, you're setting the kind of like the maximum cutoff in a way. So um, so you're only going to in continue on, or people will only advance through the selection process after they've scored higher than, let's say, a 4 on a certain amount of criteria. So here's a selection model, and our sample one. So at the top, you have the job criteria, the dress and personality, and the various people who scored the person gave them a 4 on the dress. The weight of this was just 1, so the total is 4. So you can see that this is a mathematical procedure that goes across to here. And then personality. The person got a rating of 2, and the weight on this was 5, so that gives a 10. So again, goes across here. So 2 times 5 is 10. So some interview questions. So give an example of a time you showed leadership. The rating was 3 here. The weight was 3, so 3 and 3, and that gives them a 9. So some notes here. Descriptive, but didn't seem to have the experience required. Uh, Here, did they give an example when you had to give bad news to a client? Well, they've never had to do this, so they were given a 0. So on and so forth, and then the scoring is added up, and it's this final score that one would use to rate the various candidates uh, next to each other, so to speak. So some key takeaways. Once the interview process is complete, some companies are going to use other means of measuring candidates. So, for example, work samples are a great way to see how someone might perform at your company. Uh, and work samples may not be applicable in every single situation. An aptitude test or achievement test can be given. Aptitude test measures how well someone might be able to do something, while an achievement test measures what the candidate already knows. Uh, and among these are tests that measure cognitive ability and personality. Some organizations are also going to perform things like drug tests and physical tests. Physical tests obviously might consist of being able to lift a certain amount of weight, and then honesty tests can be given. These measure the honesty level of the candidate. However, these tests may not be reliable since someone can guess the right answer, so they can kind of attempt to game the test. So game the test. So that would cut down on the reliability, of course. Some other things to keep in mind are Facebook, Twitter, and other social networking websites are also used to gather information about a candidate. And calling references is another option. So this is something really worth discussing. Facebook, Twitter, social networking sites. Be very careful about what you have, as a potential candidate, what you have out there on your social networking sites if you use that, because these can and will be used against you, if you will. We see this a number of times with potential candidates where something comes up in Facebook. There are a number of things in the news recently. Most recent is one of the candidate, one of the candidates for President Biden's cabinet. Uh, who has posted things in the past on Facebook and maybe even Twitter that were somewhat uncomplimentary of various members of Congress. So, food for thought, be very careful about that. And then every person interviewing the candidate should have a selection model. This method uses a statistical approach as opposed to a clinical approach. The selection table lists the criteria on the left and asks the interviewers to provide a rating for each. And this can give you a more consistent way, more objective way, or ultimately more objective way of measuring candidates across the whole application pool. So that brings us an end to Chapter 5, Selection. Thank you very much.